Story 1. Make it harder to become a billionaire, because I firmly believe no single person should ever have that amount of what is supposed to be a shared resource like water or food. You do not need an ocean to do the dishes. Story 2. There should be stricter, more heavily enforced regulations governing how wealthy individuals use their influence to project opinions on chat shows, podcasts, or other media, and on any acquisitions of media outlets or social media platforms. The wealthiest people in the world who were born into wealth, never lived without it, and grew up with enough capital to launch businesses with substantial financial backing are likely to hold strong political opinions and to support parties that will lower taxes for the wealthy. This is corruption. It is wrong. There should be an independent governmental body that operates beyond the authority of the party in power and has the ability to veto or block how multi-billionaires, billionaire families, or extremist individuals spend money on political influence, media ownership, and related activities. Story 3. People who hold more than a specified amount of wealth cannot hold any government posts. Story 4. Keep money out of politics. Diversify the media to prevent conglomerates. Tax them so they are no longer billionaires. Conduct forensic tax audits on all of them and bring criminal charges for any violations of tax law. Story 5. Outlaw private donations to political candidates. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Story 6. In 1973, the top 1% had 8% of the wealth. Now it is 40%. Also, super political action committees have to go. Story 7. Change the campaign finance and lobbying laws so donors and interest groups cannot openly buy politicians and judges. Story 8. Glad you asked. Half the answers here are pie in the sky or self-defeating. So let's focus on achievable reform. Economics. Worker cooperatives should be normalized instead of corporations. Workers should have more sway over where the money flows. Germany's Mitbestimmung shows a large economy can still curtail billionaire influence. If workers have more power and sit on boards, decisions will not always make money flow only to the 1%. Politics. Caps must be placed on donations. Corruption occurs in a lawless vacuum. Money needs to be removed as much as possible from a politician's calculations through legislation. The elite will always have influence, but the United States and Russia are light years away from much of Western Europe nowadays. We need better laws with teeth. Accountability must be strictly enforced. Mindset, money is power. Class warfare exists. People must focus on the facts of power and stop getting distracted by scapegoats and wedge issues. Pretending class warfare does not exist is short-sighted. If you are not at the table planning dinner, you are dinner. Story 9. Educate people. Laws are written by representatives, and everyone gets one vote in a race for Congress. Billionaires only have power because you and your neighbors give it to them. Story 10. There is nothing at this point because they control any system that could push back against them. Story 11. Cap how much a single person can donate. Prohibit businesses and corporations from donating. Make it illegal for elected representatives to accept money or gifts from businesses, corporations, or churches. Story 12. Create a more educated population that knows how to apply critical thinking and has the courage to act independently. Story 13. This is an ironic question to post on Reddit, which is owned by Ma Huadeng, Steve Huffman, and Steve Newhouse. Also posted on X, owned by Elon Musk, Facebook, owned by Mark Zuckerberg, and TikTok, owned by Yang Zhiming, Larry Ellison, the investment fund Silver Lake, and the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. Story 14. Just boycott their companies. It is our only defense against them. Story 15. Tax them appropriately. They need to contribute to the greater good. Story 16. Seat judges on the United States Supreme Court who agree with the position that money is not speech. Story 17. Well, for starters, people should not be coerced by bribes or money to do what others want. Story 18. Campaign finance reform. Make it illegal for individuals and organizations to buy politicians. Story 19. Eliminate all campaign donations. Limit campaigning to the 28 days before the election. Prohibit lobbyists from holding public office for 10 years after their last lobbying activity. and prohibit former elected officials from engaging in lobbying for life. Tax all income and capital gains over $20 million at 80%. Impose a 50% estate tax on all estates exceeding $20 million. All financial crimes involving amounts over $1 million must be prosecuted, with restitution equal to 100% of the loss plus a 50% fine, and jail time where appropriate. As a start. Story 20. Make the estate tax 100% on estates above $100 million. Nobody should inherit $1 billion. Story 21. Cap the amount of cash each person holds. Redistribute it among workers and measure how much less constrained people feel when they are no longer living paycheck to paycheck. Story 22. I doubt that will ever change, as throughout history the wealthy and strong have led wars, right or wrong. Story 23. Cap personal wealth at a strict $20 million, adjusted for inflation. No one needs more than that, and beyond it is just a meaningless status score. Story 24. Tax them out of existence. Billionaires should not exist. Story 25. We need a law that allows us the people to vote every year to strip one billionaire of all capital, leaving them with $5,000 in their cheapest car and nothing else. Story 26. Legislate to overturn Citizens United. Institute ranked choice voting everywhere. Find a nonpartisan redistricting method. Story 27. You cannot simply swat mosquitoes to stop malaria. You have to deal with the swamp. It is complicated and systemic. Everything you rely on is built on the same rules. How would banking be affected? If banks lose a large percentage of their profits, those losses are passed on as higher interest and mortgage rates, which disproportionately affect poor people. Also remember that billionaires operate where it is sufficiently profitable. They will move if that changes. Attempts to fix this can produce poorly conceived tariff policies that fragment the global network and make people worse off than before. The only real answer is root systemic change based on collaborative, objective, fact-based, open analysis and synthesis. Another option is to decouple social and personal identity from displays of consumption, which may be harder than overhauling the entire global economic system. Story 28. Repeal Citizens United. Implement progressive income taxes to make it impossible to reach $1 billion without extremely high taxes. Classify financial crimes as 3-strike offenses and impose life imprisonment after a third conviction. Make insider trading by politicians a federal offense. Publicly fund campaigns on approved platforms, provide equal time, and disqualify candidates who violate those rules. If a candidate loses an election for a position, they may never run for that same position again. Story 29. Strengthen the Federal Communications Commission and strictly enforce maximum ownership limits by market. If a company has a dominant position, such as Twitter, sole ownership should not be allowed. There should be a maximum holding per person. Companies subject to this limit should be specified by Congress, not by the President. Story 30. Enforce profit margin maximums. Cost X%. No, you can't just mark everything up $1 today because you want to make more money. Story 31. Stop kissing their ass. People are drawn to worshiping public figures as if knowing them and doing things for them will benefit you. The only way to become a billionaire is to use people. Stop being used. Only buy necessary items you can afford without credit, and hunt deals. The less you finance, the less you spend with corporations on products and services, and the more power you take from them. Most people don't remember this, but in the United States in the 1990s breakfast cereal became expensive. People simply stopped buying. There was no huge movement or organized campaign. Companies had analysts trying to figure out why sales were so down, and they panicked. They launched discount campaigns that brought the price back down to affordable levels. People didn't realize the power consumers actually have over pricing. On a larger scale, people's habits are what allow these companies to control you. Story 32. Repeal Citizens United and rescind the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which led to the abysmal media landscape we have today. Story 33. Tax them out of existence. Their power is in their wealth. Story 34. I am not saying it is perfect, but this is how we regulate campaign finance in the United Kingdom. Story 35. Restore democracy. Fix gerrymandered voting districts. Overturn Citizens United. Reduce presidential powers. Shorten the election season. Require television networks to provide free airtime to all qualified candidates. Limit the types of political advertising, including banning online political ads. End the filibuster. Block foreign money in elections. Prohibit churches from endorsing candidates. Make debates open and fair. Most importantly, convert to single-payer healthcare. When people view their government more positively, they will reduce their anger and vote for candidates who support their interests. Finally, provide a real social safety net. The country could provide universal healthcare, expand food assistance, and implement a genuine universal basic income by redirecting funds from tax cuts and military spending. Story 36. I would repeal the cap on the number of members in the House of Representatives. Today, the House would have over 12,000 members, and 4/5 of them would be from Los Angeles, New York City, or Chicago. It completely unbalances our system of checks and balances, even before Citizens United. Story 37. We have to get money out of politics. Start with repealing the Citizens United decision. Story 38. We could also stop playing by the rules. At what point do we just say fuck it? The law is apparently just a suggestion at this point, and they are not hiding that. A sanitation department should have more influence than Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, because those two are not picking up my garbage in single-digit weather. They have influence because we give it to them. Story 39. Reform campaign finance laws and reform tax codes to tax antisocial behavior. Story 40. Anyone who has a net worth of 200 million or more should be taxed at a 70% rate. Stop the billionaire worship. What are we? A bunch of serfs delighting in the king's scraps. Just stop. They are not chosen by God. They are not divine or special, and they do not care about you. Story 41. In France, toward the end of the 18th century, there was a tool. Story 42. This kind of wealth disparity is a problem in itself. Strictly enforced regulations, especially regarding bribery of politicians, would help. Regulation and culture can only do so much. If one person has more wealth than 500 million people, that person's whims can have an enormous influence on society. Story 43. Ban lobbying and call it what it is, bribery. Cap campaign spending at a low level. Political action committees would be eliminated as a result. These laws would require extreme penalties to discourage billionaires from doing it anyway, possibly including non-monetary penalties such as charges of treason, 25-year prison sentences, and removal from and bans on leadership positions in businesses. Story 44. Publicly funded political campaigns must be strictly enforced. All politicians' finances must be disclosed to the public. Story 45. Ban super political action committees and limit donations to a few $1,000s per person. No corporate entity should be allowed to donate. That would be a good start. Story 46. Tax them heavily. I would also include taxes on loans backed by capital above a certain threshold. Story 47. Reform political contributions. Businesses and entities cannot vote and should not be allowed to buy influence through contributions to politicians. Story 48. Tax them out of existence. There is no reason billionaires should exist. They do nothing for humanity. Story 49. Shun anything that has to do with money. Give your time and attention to the opposite, your neighbors and community. For example, voting is often bought and paid for, so don't vote. The same goes for television. Story 50. Structure the laws so that politicians cannot benefit financially from their office. Story 51. I think it will take us some time to figure this out. What are some current things they are doing that people do not notice? Story 52. Tax them significantly. The problem stems entirely from the fact that they have enough money to regularly buy the government and should not have that amount of money. Story 53. Being punished for their crimes and appearing in public with all assets seized. Story 54. Communism? The problem is that everyone who hates billionaires secretly wishes they were billionaires. Story 55. You all must stop asking questions with such easy answers that we are not allowed to give because of the rules on this site. Story 56. More face-to-face communication and less use of the internet or television. Story 57. Take their money. That is the only option. Capitalism is constructed to favor whoever has the most money. When wealth is distributed, the masses have more influence, but when one person has $500 billion, it is difficult for anything the masses do to outweigh that. For capitalism to work, wealth must be reasonably well distributed. Story 58. Stop listening to them or calling them business geniuses. Stop reading their ghostwritten books. That would be a good starting point. Story 59. From a high school history textbook, China did the following after the Communist Revolution. 1. Nationalization. Many key industries, such as oil, railways, and telecommunications, were nationalized. Billionaires were reduced to passive income recipients. Some competent ones were offered management positions. 2. Cooperative arrangements. Unlike nationalization, the state acquired golden shares and appointed managers to limit the absolute power of previous owners. 3. Direct competition from newly established state-owned or local government-owned enterprises. 4. Persecution of unlawful billionaires. Many billionaires were criminals who ran underground crime organizations, bribed officials, bought judges, hired muscle to deal with enemies, or committed sexual assault and so on. The get-out-of-jail card no longer worked under communism. Story 60. Make lobbyists illegal. Impose jail time for anyone who tries to lobby Congress. Story 61. Regulations and taxes. You can't reduce their influence. You have to prevent them from becoming billionaires. Story 62. Get rid of permanent stock dividends. Story 63. Amend the Constitution to overturn Citizens United's so limits on political spending and public funding can be imposed or removed. Restore fair and neutral Federal Communications Commission rules. Pol Pot could be whitewashed as a traditional conservative by Fox. They would be proud to try. Jeff Bezos should never have been allowed to control the editorial room of his paper. Given what happened even in relatively sophisticated countries such as Italy, Japan, and Germany in the 1920s, the public interest in remaining a republic requires both a lack of partisanship in major media outlets and no direct oligarch control of editorial opinion. Story 64. Take all money out of politics. Make it impossible for money to buy politicians' votes. Eliminate billionaires. Any amount over $500 million should be taxed at 99%. That is generous. It is more money than anyone will ever need. Story 65. Train people to stop believing everything they see and hear. The old government employees' insurance company Bonjour commercial is spot on about how gullible people are. This works against anyone, regardless of wealth or political ideology. However, it is unlikely to happen because many people choose to seek out things that make them angry. Story 66. So long as money equals power, there will be no change. Those with money control almost all media, the courts, legislatures, and other institutions in many places. Story 67. Labor unions give workers leverage against large corporations and support higher taxes to redistribute wealth. Supporters of Make America Great Again oppose both. Story 68. Tax them into millionaires, then into thousands if that does not work. Story 69. Implement strict rules on political donations and contributions for election candidates. Authorities should audit candidates thoroughly and set a maximum contribution limit. Canada has such rules, but I am not sure how strictly they are enforced. Story 70. Billionaires should not exist. There is no ethical way to earn $1 billion. Someone somewhere was harmed along the way, often thousands of people or more. Story 71. Tax them appropriately based on their worth, not their income. Make them criminally and civilly liable for the wrongdoings of their businesses. Story 72. Mock them every time they are in public. Make them living jokes. Point, laugh, make fun of them. Never let them feel good about themselves. Make them feel unwelcome wherever they go. If they want to live above the normal man must make sure they are never comfortable in the normal man's domains. Let's raise children to understand that these people are not special because they have money. Normalize mocking billionaires. Normalize making them uncomfortable when they pretend to be one of us. When they enter our spaces, they need to learn they are our jesters. They need to know that, no matter how much power, money, or how many sycophants they have, they will never be as happy as a laborer coming home to his family, a little girl taking her first dance class, or a little boy learning to fish. They cannot buy that happiness or that normalcy. Story 73. The theory that a billionaire cabal is controlling your life is way oversold on Reddit. Story 74. Punch them in the mouth so they understand they are not better than the rest of us. Story 75. Not allowing them to donate funds to political parties. Story 76. 18% income tax across the board, with no exceptions or deductions. Story 77. I have an idea. No, not by feeding them to polar bears, you psychopath. Make it illegal for any individual to own more than $999,999,999.99 in wealth. Any kind of wealth. You have a $1 billion Faberge egg collection. Tough shit. It's illegal. Story 78. Isolate members of Congress for their full term from everyone outside and record all phone calls. Story 79. Remove the career criminal, thief, pathological liar, rapist, pedophile, grifter, and conman from the presidency, preferably sent directly to prison, and put a man with a heart and a brain into the White House. Story 80. No single family should have more than $100 million. That is an enormous amount of money. Having that much excess or more is simply wrong. Story 81. Limit how many homes individuals and corporations can own. Story 82. Take some of their money so they cannot buy all that influence and also urge them. Story 83. 100% tax on all income above a few $1,000,000, with the revenue invested in public programs to equalize wealth. Story 84. Stop buying from corporations that enrich the wealthy. Buy local and tax those corporations more. Trickle-down economics does not work. Stop glorifying billionaires like Elon Musk. He acts in his own interest and seeks supporters for his ventures. Do you really think all the satellites he launches are intended to benefit humanity? No, they collect information on people. Story 85. Citizens must take responsibility and stop blaming billionaires for everything wrong in their lives. Good luck with that. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.